What's a realistic outlook for the kind of 2026 salary cap space the Dolphins can create? We're going to get into that here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Special thank you to each and every one of you who've helped to make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by FanDuel. It's last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5, get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Today on the show, not super cap geeky, but worth acknowledging. We're going to be looking at realistically what kind of space the Dolphins can create against the 2026 salary cap. And there's a couple of footnotes as far as things to know, whether you like to look at this kind of stuff yourself between the over the cap and the spot track. There's the two cap resources that are out there for you guys to use. Some discrepancies in the cap numbers and kind of explaining what the difference is there. Knowing the timeline for when you need certain amount of cap space, knowing the rules for like the post June 1st cuts is a fresher upper in that regard. So little bit of administrative stuff, but really going to be trying to focus on like who are your realistic pre and post June 1st departures, what kind of cap space can you create, etc. The big chess pieces for the Dolphins, you look at. There's 8 players on the books for 2026 that carry salary cap charges of at least $10 million in cap space. Now, as a reminder, the number one thing I think the Dolphins need to achieve is to further slash their cash budget, because the cash budget is what dictates how much you're putting on the credit card in the future years. The less you spend, the less you're putting onto your annual balance that gets carried over year. That's the ticket to fixing the cap situation as a whole. Here's the good news. I look at these names, Tyreek Hill, $26 million or $36 million in cash. It's not guaranteed at all. Bradley Chubb, it's over $20 million. It's not guaranteed at all. Minkah Fitzpatrick's 15.6. It's not guaranteed at all. Austin Jackson, $9.88 million in base salary. It's not guaranteed. In total, it's Tua Tagovailoa, Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Austin Jackson, Jalen Waddle, Zach Sealer, Jordan Brooks. Those are the names on the cap books that are at least $10 million in cap space. And then it's Aaron Brewer at 9 and change, and then Devon Achane in the last year of his rookie contract. He got a performance boost, the NFL's rookie wage scale and the collective bargaining agreement. If you outperform with production, your draft status, your last year, you do get like an adjustment on how much you're owed. So Achane's going to check in just short of $6 million, just over 5.5 in a salary for 2026. Money well spent, right? Of the 8, I think the Dolphins would probably benefit from at least 3, if not 4 of these players going away. Of course, the fine print here is that Tua's got a fully guaranteed salary. If you're looking to move on from Tua Tagovailoa, you're not getting any cash savings unless you were to get somebody to trade for the contract and a partial savings in that regard. Very messy. But as you look at the projections, it's interesting that over the cap currently has the Dolphins $16.2 million over the salary cap projection. And the NFL just came out with their salary cap forecast and told the teams in a memo it could be 302 or 301.2 to 305.2. And then there's whatever you're able to bring over from the previous year of unused salary cap that you can roll over into the upcoming year. There's a difference of about $8 million between Spot Track and Over the Cap, the two cap sites, for how much cap space the Dolphins has. The best as I can tell, this discrepancy is rooted in the Over the Cap is a snapshot at this point in time, whereas the Spot Track version accounts for your rookies that need to be signed after you finish the draft in April, right? Like those it's counting those contracts as the top 51 cap charges because they're what's currently committed to your draft pick schedule. So you're going to pick somebody at 11th, and that's a fixed number because there's a percentage of revenue that all the draft picks share. And if you get picked in whatever slot, like the first overall pick, it's the largest slice of the pie. And then the number 2 pick hits the next largest slice of the pie. So, for example, the 11th overall pick is going to carry a cap hit of $5.068 million against the Dolphins. That would be good for, as things currently stand, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 11th highest cap charge on the team, as things currently stand right now, is going to be the 11th overall pick. Now, they might sign somebody in free agency. I'd be surprised if they sign somebody in free agency with a salary cap charge is going to be over $6 million. Maybe you get one if you slash Hill and Chubb and Minkah and Austin and you offload all those guys. And I think there's a pretty decent chance that happens. When you consider, from what those guys are owed perspective, total compensation due their way, Tyreek is $36 million. Bradley Chubb is $20.23. Minkah's $15.6. Austin's $11.5. James Daniels is $7.87. Jason Sanders is $4.25, right? Like, there's some pretty significant, and none of those are guaranteed. James Daniels has like 3.5 that guarantees the 5th day of the league year of March. So you got a lot of wiggle room in that regard, but it's a little bit less in the way of salary cap space. And I think that's the conversation that becomes interesting is what's the timing of the cap schedule and how can you create savings to be compliant? And if you want to sign somebody in free agency, and they can go about this any which way, but as long as they cut the cash, they'll be better long-term for it. So the big chess pieces, one last time before we get into, and I'm going to use the over the cap tool because it's not including the draft picks, because you could wait until you could post June 1st somebody and then get extra cap space after June 1st and sign your rookies with the extra cap savings you get after June 1st, which I think I would probably advocate for if I was the Dolphins. So what does that look like? That's what we're going to get into next, but I'm going to use the over the cap tool and kind of walk through, because that does not include rookie signings that you can make in April or in June for picks that you make in April. And we'll put that in on the back end and kind of talk about realistically what we should expect from the form of how much cap space they create and some different philosophies that they can use to go about their business in that regard. That's next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR, so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is an all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all in one place without the hassle or hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs on one monthly price, which means there's no surprise charges at the end of each month. And you can know that you can reach certified HR experts anytime that give you real peace of mind as you run your business. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. Get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. That's one more time, gusto.com/LockedOnNFL. It is last call for football this season. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season comes to a close. At Super Bowl 60, FanDuel is making sure you are right in the middle of the action with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding the underdog, building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. There are predictions that turn into plays, stats that turn into storylines. Every snap feels bigger during the Super Bowl. It's the perfect way to cap off the season. Make the Super Bowl even more exciting from first kickoff to final whistle, whether you are interested in any of the ways that FanDuel has to play. So to make it count, if you're a new customer, bet $5, get $200 in bonus bets if you win. With FanDuel, you could go out with a bang this season. So it's last call for football on FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So using the over the cap tool, which does not account for the rookie wage scale, it is quite interesting to realize that you could move on pre-June 1st from Tyreek Hill and save $23 million of cap space. And with the new cap projections and the carryover cap from last year, the Dolphins can be salary cap compliant just by moving on from Tyreek Hill per the over the cap tool. Now, you're going to need a certain amount of cap space to operate because you need to do free agency and you need to sign some players, not a ton of players, but you need to sign a few. And remember, it's only the top 51 that count against the cap. So if your 51st player counts for minimum salary and you sign a veteran that has like a slightly larger minimum salary, but is still a minimum salary player, and that minimum salary is determined by how many years of tenure you have in the league, it might only cost you a few $100,000 against the cap to sign that new veteran player. I would expect the Dolphins will be selective in that regard. They're not going to bring in a bunch of those kinds of players, but a few players that maybe have connections with Hafley and Jon-Eric Sullivan and other coaches that they've added on the staff that they feel are the right kinds of players. Whether they're second contract guys that kind of has the chip on the shoulder like the KJ Britts and the Willie Gays and the Greg Dulciches of the world, or whether they are the long in the tooth guys like the Rasul Douglases who spent some time in Green Bay. Like, who knows? I'm not going to pretend to forecast what those guys are going to get right now. But that's the kind of action I would expect in free agency, which means you're not going to need a ton unless you're going to sign a splashy player like a quarterback, right? And that's not the show for today, so we're not going to get into that. But it should be considered on the table. But with over the cap, Tyreek Hill, you take that pre-June 1st, those $23 million in savings gets you salary cap compliant and then like a little bit of change. That's where I think I see some people reference Tyreek Hill as a post-June 1st cut. I don't think you can afford to wait until June 1st because if you make it a post-June 1st cut, you don't get any of the cap savings until June 2nd, which means you'd still need to clear like $18 million in cap space elsewhere with your other players if you're going to post-June 1st Tyreek Hill. I think it becomes an interesting conversation to talk about post-June 1sting Bradley Chubb, potentially. Where Bradley Chubb, he's on the books for a $31 million cap hit. If you move on from him outright, no questions asked, you save about $7.5 million in space. But if you do it with a post-June 1st designation, you save $20.23 million, but you don't get it. So would you rather have $20 million in savings and wait until June 1st to get it, or would you rather just get the $7.5 million in savings up front and defer less of it to next year? 20.23 is a large chunk of coin. That's where Minkah Fitzpatrick and Bradley Chubb are the two, I think, big dominoes. Because you could do the same thing with Minkah Fitzpatrick. You could move on from him pre-June 1st and take a $13 million dead cap charge off of about a $19 million debt or cap hit that he's scheduled for and save about $6 million in cap space pre-June 1st. So 7.5 for Bradley and $6 million for Minkah if you move on pre-June 1st. You go post-June 1st, the Minkah number goes to 15.6 in savings. You could take $15.6 million in savings and you could turn that into your rookie class. You could turn that into your practice squad throughout the course of the season. And that could be a lot of, not all of, but a lot of your wiggle room for if you have injuries throughout the course of the season, you need to sign more players onto the roster to carry with you. So that's pretty interesting to me with those two guys is to consider. Now, do you move on from either one? Do you feel like there's any trade value for either one of these guys? If you trade them, it's going to get treated just like a pre-June 1st cut where you're going to get the smaller number of the savings. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick has significantly more trade value than Bradley Chubb, considering Bradley Chubb with the injury history that he has and a salary that's 33% higher for 2026 than Minkah's is. So if it were me and I were strategizing, I would like to have Minkah back, but I'm also trying to be realistic about like what you're going to have to slash off of payroll, right? Tyreek's done. I would probably give some consideration to a post-June first cut for Bradley Chubb, just because I don't think you're going to have a lot of luck getting somebody to bite on the salary for $20 million. Now, if you could sit him down and you could have the conversation, you could get him to take a $10 million pay cut right off the jump, maybe, just because you're going to need bodies. But at the same time, like, what's the long-term payoff? I'd probably move on for Bradley. And Bradley, it's a shame because Bradley, from like a leadership perspective and a veteran perspective, would be probably the one I would want back the most. But having the realistic conversation about the long-term outlook of the team and what the payoff's going to be and cutting the salary, I would probably take the post-June 1st savings for Bradley Chubb. So I would get no extra savings up front. I would skip the 7.5 in savings at the beginning in March, and then I would take the $20.3 million in savings in June of 2026. And with that $20 million, I can plan on and bank on potentially taking care of my draft class, having enough spending power to sign a free agency if I have an injury, and I can make sure I take care of my practice squad all in one fell swoop. It's kind of what they did with Xavier Howard 2 years ago, where he was a post-June 1st cut, and it was the same conversation was had where it's like, yeah, you could put yourself in a window where you could get a couple $1 million in savings, or you can use that as your second wave of free agency / whatever else business-wise you need to get through the season with. So we'll lop off Bradley Chubb, but because we're going to do the post-June 1st, and you only get 2 post-June 1st cuts, and I think we need to leave one available for depending on what they do with Tua Tagovailoa, even though there's no cap savings there with Tua Tagovailoa. Like, I think Tua and Bradley Chubb for me would probably be the 2 that I would have circled that if I'm going to use post-June 1st cuts. And again, I'm not saying that's what I would do. At least with the quarterback, I think there's a lot that's in play there. That's a very complicated case. I'd have it reserved and earmarked for those 2. But because we're going to use the post-June 1st for Bradley Chubb, like, I can't knock any more savings off in that sense. Now you're getting down to probably some players that are going to need some contract extensions. And I know that feels counterproductive, right? We're trying to save cash, so we're going to give more in the way of money to players that are on the roster, which I get. But if we're going to come out here and we're going to start naming guys like Jordan Brooks and Aaron Brewer as roster building blocks and cornerstones of your team, they're both going into contract years. You could probably save a combined $8 million off of those 2 guys combined if you were to extend them both. And I think they both earned it. I think you're probably in a spot with Devon Achane where you could probably save a little bit, $1 million or so off of his next contract if you were to extend him too. I don't know where I really fall on Devon Achane with a contract extension yet. But Brewer and Brooks to me feel like no-brainers in contract years. Because you're talking about moving on from Bradley Chubb, you're saving $20 million in payroll there. Because you're moving on from Tyreek Hill, you're saving $36 million. So you've cut $55+ million in payroll with those 2 guys alone. And that's before you get to the other names like the Austin Jacksons of the world and the James Danielses of the world, right? You could save another $20 million in payroll off of those 2 guys. You could pay the market prices for Brooks and Brewer, and you're still talking about saving $50 million. Right? And then you take your lumps with 2, and then that comes off your books next year. So right now we've established like what I would do is I'm taking Tyreek Hill pre-June 1st because I need the $23 million influx. I would post-June 1st Bradley Chubb. I'm willing to shop. I'm also willing to extend Minkah Fitzpatrick. Like, I'm flexible there, but I'm extending Jordan Brooks and Aaron Brewer as veteran guys in contract years. Devon Achane, I'm probably slow playing that one a little bit. I think he's deserved the contract extension. But the running back position relative to the build, I might want to take my time with that one. personally. You could trim some of the fat. We'll get into that on the other side of the break as far as like other names that we could lop off, where that's going to put you in the way of March spending power. That's next. Make sure you guys stick with us. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is sponsored by BetterHelp. February can be a lot. Flowers, candy, stuffed animals. There's so much to talk about with relationships this month. And it can honestly feel like everyone else has it all together in their love life. But here's the truth, whether you're married, single, dating, or just focusing on you, most people are still figuring it out. No matter what your romantic journey is, therapy can help you find your way. It can help you get clear what you want for yourself, what feels heavy, how to take pressure off of yourself. It's easy to assume everyone else has the perfect relationship, but most people are working through something below the surface. And therapy can help you recognize patterns that might be weighing your relationships down, whether that's with someone else or yourself. The biggest thing, it reminds you that you're not behind. You're right on time. BetterHelp has licensed therapists in the U.S., and they do the initial matching work for you so you could focus on your goals. And if you want to switch therapists, you could do that at any time. Sign up, get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BETTERHELP.com/lockedon. It's tax season. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax's full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms, help work to get you every deduction possible. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150, all in if a TurboTax expert did not file for you last year. Just filed by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate. Get back to real life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. So this is per the over the cap tool. Moving on from Tyreek Hill outright is going to get the Dolphins about $6 million in cap space, and that doesn't include having to sign your rookies, right? I would probably, and we're earmarking the ability to do a post-June 1st cut with Bradley Chubb and Tua Tagovailoa, but that means no savings in March. If we're going to do extensions for Brooks and Brewer, I'll go conservative. Let's call it six. Yeah, we'll go low. We'll go $6 million in cap savings to do market contract extensions for those two players. So now you're about $12 million in cap space. And then you're going to have with Bradley Chubb another $20 million coming June 2nd. You can sign all your rookies, do whatever. I would probably, if I were the Dolphins, be ready to move on from Jason Sanders and save $4 million in cap space. I would probably, if I were the Dolphins, be willing to move on from Tyrell Dotson. And you could save $3 million in cap space there. I'm not super convicted on that one, but that is a footnote that I would acknowledge. That the $3 million in cap space is not a small deal for spending power. Same for Alec Ingold. I'm probably asking that question. Would we move on? Would we be better going a different direction with presumably a fullback, or is the Slowick offense carrying a fullback? I'm assuming Jeff Hafley's going to want to get under center and go about running the ball from under center with some play action and some 21 personnel. Can you have a tight end with some alignment versatility to do it instead? I'm probably ready. And you do need to be careful here because we're talking about Sanders has been a team captain. Alec Ingold's been a team captain. We're talking about moving on from Bradley Chubb. He's been a team captain, like very well-respected leaders, right? But you're doubling down on Brewer and Brooks. I think those guys can serve in leadership roles for the team. But for Alec Ingold and Jason Sanders, I can get $7 million in cap savings off of those two guys. Like that for me, I'm doing, right? Like I'd be more than ready to take that on. So with those moves, Tyreek Hill, this is for the over the cap numbers. Moving on from Tyreek Hill, getting $23 million in savings. Restructuring Brooks and Brewer, and we're going to call it $6 million in savings there. So now we're at, that's $29 million in savings, plus another $7 million in savings for Sanders and Ingold. You're at $36 million in savings. So you get about $20 million in cap space right here and now. I don't think you have to do anything else. But again, there's a cash versus or a cash spend conversation where Austin Jackson is still on the books for $11.5 million in salary. You can move on from Austin Jackson and you take a almost break even on the cap. You'd only save $1.5 million versus the $15 million cap charge he's taken because he's been restructured the last 2 years. But I'd probably almost rather do that than carry it over into next year because we're playing a long-term cap game and a short-term cash burn game simultaneously. So I'd move on from Austin Jackson. Right? And if that means we re-sign Larry Borom and we've got a familiarity with Bobby Slowick and the offensive scheme and that kind of we're targeting it potentially a tackle in the draft. But you know what your floor is with Larry Borom. Like I'm probably comfortable with that. I don't think it's a great long-term answer, and I don't want anybody to confuse any of these to be great long-term answers. But right now, we're like, we got to get the books lined up, right? And we got to move on from some players. Now, maybe Austin Jackson has some trade value. It's 1 year, $11.5 million. Would it be the end of the world if he kept him? No, just like with Minkah Fitzpatrick. If you're going to keep Minkah, I think it probably would benefit and behoove you to extend him so you're not carrying a $19 million cap charge for him. But realistically, I would say you could probably get to about $20 million in cap space, and that's before you do anything with Tua. By stripping down some players that are probably at the tail end, and the performance hasn't necessarily met the pay, or a guy like Sanders missed all year last year, and you got good kicking performance from a replacement that you signed the week before training camp. You're talking about $4 million in savings and like a $4.5 million cap hit. Like just dollars and cents stuff, right? You need about $20 million in cap space. And you're clearing a lot. I mean, you'd be up to like $120 million in 2027 cap space in this scenario. And that's before you get rid of the Tua stuff with it, however you choose to do it. There's a whole bunch of ways they can go about the Tua thing. And that's its own show. That's its own week's worth of programming. But just with this kind of general approach, and I haven't touched Minkah, it's probably safe to say you get about $20 million in spending power, all said and done, and then another 20 that would come June 2nd. You apply that responsibly, judiciously, and then we're going to be that team that's rolling into 2027 with 9 figures in cap space. And I would ask you, would you miss Tyreek Hill with the 3.5 games we got from him this past year, knowing that he's like age 32 season? Probably not. We'd miss Bradley Chubb, but like grand scheme and considered what the performance was relative to the pay. Did he play to the pay? As the guy who was probably like the highest achiever of the edge room this year? I understand the edge room's a problem. Bradley would help make it a higher floor position. But that's not what we're exploring right now, right? Would you miss Austin Jackson for half the season? And I like Austin Jackson. I feel like I like him a lot more than the general consensus. But he's in a contract year and he's missed the half of each of the last 2 years. Tough sell, right? Would you miss Jason Sanders? Did you miss Jason Sanders this year? Maybe on a couple of 50-plus yard kick opportunities, but that was about it. Would you miss Tyrell Dodson? Well, he's a productive player. I think you get more dynamic there in the pass game. I don't think it's the end of the world if Tyrell Dodson comes back, and it's not going to like make or break this strategy. But realistically, and maybe they do this as they go, because the Dolphins have done that in years past too, but I'd be surprised if they did it as they went, because they're going to be stripping down the cash element of the team because they want to get healthy books long-term. I'd be surprised if they did it as they went. Now, they might slow play their Tua decision because maybe they don't want to accelerate another $13 million in cap charges to decline the option bonus and then cut him with a June 1st designation, because now all of a sudden you're talking about you lose $13 million in cap space in June if you decline the option. Now, if you decline the option, you might lose the cap space earlier than that, because right now it's $15 million spread out across 5 seasons of cap charges. But if you decline the option first, all that other $12 million is going to come back into this year. If I were the Dolphins, I'd be exercising the option bonus either way. Because that way, if you post June 1st him after you exercise the option bonus, I mean, you're break even this year, and then next year you take on a $42 million cap charge, and you'd save $11 million next year against the cap versus what he's currently on the books for to be on the roster. That's much more appealing to me than doing 67 this year and 33 next year. So expect 20. Like that's my number. I kind of expect they can get close to 20 with extensions, with cuts, and then a post-June 1st cut for Bradley Chubb. I would exercise that one, and then I would take advantage of that for all my wiggle room to carry me through till the 2027 offseason. That's going to do it for us here today on the show. Let me know which ones, who are you keeping? I'm asking you to pick one to keep. If you've made it to the end of the show, in the comments on the YouTube, if you're listening on YouTube, you have to keep one. Are you keeping Bradley Chubb, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Austin Jackson, James Daniels? Let me know which one you're keeping. That's going to do it for us here on the show. I would be keeping Minkah Fitzpatrick. Keep it locked in right here, Locked on Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys as always. Check out the show. I'll talk to you all again tomorrow. Fins up.